Like I talked about getting rid of the whole left and right narrative, focusing on the future, building for the future. But that's two things for me that really stand out in terms of Bitcoiners is the anti-establishment, which perfect representation of that is Trump. Could not ask for a better guy in a position than Trump and his team too. So anti-establishment and builders. That's who is in charge of the US. That's who's in charge of the most influential country on earth right now, is people who are anti-establishment and people who are builders. And I think what we're about to unlock here as the US and as the world is abundance. And Bitcoin is the tool that's going to get us there. And we have the right people in charge, adults in the room, who can facilitate this. So my predictions for Bitcoin, for Trump, and I should have wrote these down because I had 4 or 5 of them that I thought were really good. I'll probably only remember 3 of them, but as I talk here, we'll probably be able to refresh a few. So the first one, my prediction for Trump, Bitcoin, his term, how they relate. My first prediction is that he's absolutely going to free Ross on day one, as day one as it could get. I think probably because there's been so much press around it, like more than anything else, probably in history. But I think it'll happen day one, if not, that week. So that's my first prediction. Is I absolutely think that Trump will pardon Ross Ulbricht. And the reason I say that is not just because I like Trump and I like Ross, but like he's gone out of his way. He's working with David Bailey, the head of Bitcoin Magazine. He was at the conference talking about it. Bitcoiners have been talking about it for the last 3 or 4 months since he announced that. And the last tweet he made on October 31st, on Halloween, on Satoshi's The White Paper Day, he sent out a tweet wishing happy 16th birthday to the Bitcoin White Paper. And one of his hashtags that he used was free Ross day one. 21, 22, 25 million people saw that tweet. He didn't have to include that hashtag in there, but he did. So I think that's my first prediction, is that he's absolutely going to pardon Ross on day one. The second one here is that leading up to the election here, Trump's been kind of going everywhere. He's been bouncing around. He's been meeting with a whole bunch of people. He's been doing rallies. But 2 big things that really stood out for me was the time that he met with the miners. So right around the time where Trump said that he was going to, be a Bitcoin friendly president, he met with Riot and he met with CleanSpark. And so I think that the Trump administration, the people on his team there, are going to put a very big emphasis on Bitcoin mining and using all the energy as the guy. What was his name there? We listened to him talk about the mining, but as he said there, like mining has so many benefits to countries like Canada, countries like the US, where there's an absolute abundance of energy. A lot of it gets wasted or it gets sold for almost nothing, but we now have the ability to convert that energy into Bitcoin instantly. No middleman, no power lines, nothing. It converts instantly into, hey, you're going to have to stop that, bud. Converts it instantly into money. So I absolutely think that Trump probably already has some agreements in place with miners, and the US government under Trump will be either subsidizing or working with Riot, CleanSpark, and whoever else to convert all the energy in the US, whether that's solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, or nuclear, whatever you want to call it. All the energy is going to be converted into Bitcoin. Any excess, any wasted is going to be converted into Bitcoin under Trump. And what's that going to lead to? So that's my second prediction, is they're going to go very hard on Bitcoin mining. But the third prediction, which ties into that, is that I think that Trump is going to get rid of federal income taxes by the end of his term. I think he's talked about no tax on tips. He's talked about no tax on Social Security. He's talked about no tax for veterans, no tax on Bitcoin buying and selling. I think he's going to completely wipe out federal taxes. And he's mentioned tariffs, and I think the tariffs are much more relatable for the average person. If he came out and said they're going to replace the federal income taxes with Bitcoin mining, people would think he's a fucking Looney Tune, more than they already do. So I think between tariffs and between Bitcoin mining, I think Trump is going to completely wipe out federal income taxes. So that's number 3. And it's very possible, because what we're going to do there, and just to kind of elaborate, I talk about this on the show all the time, and I have been for a while now, but what's going to happen there is we've been put into this situation with the fiat dollar where we have to pay the tax. We have to fund the government. Human resources have to pay for the government, and a very, very, very fat, bloated, inefficient government at that. So he's going to shrink the government, which ties into this, the tax stuff. He's working with Elon already for the Department of Government Efficiency. But the income taxes, the human resources that we're paying are going to shift to natural resources. So we went from human resources, us paying taxes, us going to work 5 days a week, 40 hours, 45 hours, working 2 or 3 jobs just to eat. That's human resources. But we're going to go into a world with natural resources, where the energy, where the abundance of energy that we have in these countries will pay for the government. So that's number 3. No federal income taxes. I expect that to be done by end of his term minimum. And as a bonus to that, this is going to be 3.5 prediction. But think about that. Think about what that would look like for people. They'd have way more money, way more take-home money. They'd have way less stress. They would know now that this is possible to do. So in November 2028, when we have the next election, do you think if the Democrats say that this was a dumb idea by Trump to get rid of federal income taxes, do you think that that's ever going to go back? Once we get to that point where there's no federal income taxes, just like how when MicroStrategy gets to number 1 on the stock market, it's never going to change. Once they get rid of federal income taxes, they're never coming back for at least hundreds of years. Because if a party comes out and said, hey, this was a dumb idea to get rid of income tax, people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is the best 4 years we've ever had. We don't have to spend 30% of our check to pay for the dumbest people on earth to go and argue all day. So once we get there, we're never going back to paying income taxes. That's what we have to understand here, because it wouldn't make sense. Nobody would vote to go back into income taxes. So that's 3.5. And the 4th one, and I might have had one more, but we're going to end the last one with this one, the 4th one. Now I got to remember it. So I don't have any notes here. That's what it was, the currency. So my 4th prediction, probably the boldest one here, is I think that Trump is going to get rid of the central banks, cut ties with the Federal Reserve, and I think that he's going to roll that responsibility that because everybody thinks that the Federal Reserve is run by the government. It's not. It's not federal. They don't have any reserves, and they've had way too much power for the last 100 years. So you cut ties with that. That's the fiat dollar. That's what everything's backed by, is the Federal Reserve. They have the ability to create money out of nothing. So you get rid of that. You roll that into the U.S. Treasury instead. And probably for a while, they'll both coexist. I don't know for how long. I have no idea. But you roll that into the U.S. Treasury and you back the new U.S. dollar. I think that Trump's going to come out with either a new version of the U.S. dollar or some sort of competing. I think it'll be a U.S. dollar because Trump's a big U.S. guy. So they now have the currency, and that currency is going to be backed by energy, by Bitcoin, by gold, maybe, by oil. And so think about that. Just play through that scenario in your head. Get rid of the illusionary dollar, create a new one that's actually backed by something that has real value. Think about how fast you could start paying off your $36 trillion worth of debt when you have one currency that's worth nothing and one currency that is going only up in value. And yes, there will be many things that come with this. There's going to be a lot more transparency because they're going to have to prove that they have those reserves of Bitcoin, their stockpile. They're going to issue a currency off of that. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to pay off their debt with the new US dollar. Because Trump said $36 trillion, we're going to throw him a couple Bitcoins and pay that off. How do you think that that's going to happen? Do you think that one Bitcoin is going to be worth $17 trillion each? No. They're going to create their new currency. It's going to have actual value, and they're going to pay off their completely their currency without any value. So that's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to have to bookmark this. November 6, 2024. And if that happened, could you imagine? Could you imagine what we would unlock? The whole problem with the fiat system, the whole problem that with the world that we've been living in, is that they just basically make it as hard as they can for us. They stomp on our necks day after day. And that's why even, I started the show today with like, yeah, I was happy, but I didn't want to celebrate because I just feel like, something's coming. It's like knocking on a door, expecting something good, and there's somebody there to punch you in the face right after. That's how we live now. And it shouldn't be like that. It never was like that before until the fiat dollar. And so you get rid of that, everything changes. You unlock so much energy, both from resources and from humans. And that's the world we're moving into now. And it's fucking awesome.